5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
This is Views in Paradox.
Cinema, discussion, thought-provoking, trivia, genre,
Drama,
romance, mystery,
action,
topical,
costume,
overrated, informative, tangent,
captivating,
amazing, thought-provoking,
eye-opening,
discussion,
anime,
views
in
paradox.
Welcome, any and all, to episode 21 of Views in Paradox. Today we will be talking Portrait of a Lady on Fire, or apparently the more accurate translation is Portrait of a Young Lady on Fire, but they altered for the American and British releases. Today we have a new guest, Nova Jones, an actress. Welcome to the show.
Hi, thank you for having me.
And as always, we have my co-host, Rochalle Racine.
Hi.
So this movie, Portrait of a Lady on Fire. Nova, you nominated this film, and I'll say right up top, you were the third, if I'm remembering correctly.
Like in a row.
In a row.
Surprise me.
Our
I
last-
feel like if you're a film buff, you love it.
Yeah, we have a lot of filmy people on the show, and so they like artsy stuff. I was kind of hesitant to go into this movie based on the trailer, just because I felt like it was going to be pretentious, but also I was worried about it just kind of being like empty. And it, after watching it, I feel like it made me reevaluate pretentious. Like I looked it up. I was like, am I using this right? And the definition says that it's self-important, but without sort of something to back it up. And I feel like this film does back it up. Like, I feel like it had a lot of substance to it. It is very arty. It is kind of a filmmaker's film in a lot of ways. But I'll recant a little bit my hesitance and my thoughts that it would be pretentious. I'll just say right up front, I really love this film. So thank you. I just want to say for nominating it, and Rochalle for forcing me to finally.
I was like, we're going to do this. Real quick, I'm glad you brought that up because my first question to ask you, Jon, was this pretentious?
Yeah, just a little. I think at the end, just a little, and that's okay. It's French, and most French film is a touch self-important, I would say.
Like anything historical fiction can.
Yeah, anytime you go period, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, as soon as you get the costumes on and you bust out the like really nice prime lenses, that's when it starts to kind of, veer that way where you can kind of. I was just worried it was going to be something like The Square. Have you guys seen that movie?
No.
Oh my god, it's like a film that kind of takes the piss out of pretentious films, but in itself is just like way too pretentious.
That's funny.
That movie would be fun to just like explore the definition of pretentious.
Maybe one day, huh?
Yeah.
As a self-proclaimed snob, I have to say that I did not find this movie pretentious. I thought it was beautiful, and everything was backed up.
Yeah, this movie's great. Let's talk about real quick. I wanted to bring up something that connects to one of our past episodes, and that's that this was debuted at Cannes Film Festival, and when it first premiered, it looked like the vibe was that it was a shoe-in for the Palme d'Or, and it was narrowly beat out by a film we watched just recently in Parasite. Which that is a dukem. It's hard to beat Parasite in general. Like, this movie is like kind of any other year. I'd side with it, but I don't know. Parasite was just something else.
I agree. I want to like touch into this a little bit more once we kind of talk about the Academy Awards new inclusion requirements. But like the whole time I was watching this, I was thinking, why wasn't this nominated? And then I realized the year it came out and I was like, oh, okay. I see why.
Because Parasite
that's
just swept everything away.
Yeah, they just
Oh,
swept
yeah.
everything. Yeah.
I mean, they
yeah.
had a more original way of storytelling. You know, you can't not go with that one. It's refreshing. It's well done. It's engaging. And this one, I feel like, you know, we've seen it before in other versions. Very good, very well done, but not incredibly original.
Yeah,
Yeah.
not as fresh as Parasite. Although
Right.
it did win the BAFTA over Parasite for Best Foreign Language Film. So it was, they gave it some love over in Europe. It just really didn't make its way to the States beyond like the sort of IFC indie theater
Which-
scene.
To be honest, our film viewing patterns here, I am not surprised by that whatsoever. So
Yeah,
Do you also
absolutely.
think maybe like cultural influences could be another thing too? Because I know that, you know, a lot of K-pop, for example, it's sort of making its way into the Western, you know, into America. So I feel like we're sort of starting to look at Korea a lot more closely. And then this movie comes along, Parasite. So I feel like that could be it too, where we're really sort of looking at that more than we are looking at, you know, French movies at the moment.
I actually completely agree with that now that you say that, because like K-pop, K-beauty is huge. French
Yeah.
beauty has always been a part of our like culture, but the thing is it's a very pretentious thing. Like you just typically see a lot of rich white women use French products, right? So yeah, I completely see that. Where like K-beauty, like it's for, I mean, yes, it's for a specific skin tone because of where it comes from, but like it's more inclusive somehow at the same time. Yeah.
Exactly. And then you've got
Yeah.
like, I mean, BTS, that
Yeah.
they're huge right now. So I feel like ever since
They're on
they
SNL
happened-
for crying out loud.
Yeah, exactly. So now I feel like ever since that's been happening, I think that we've sort of been thinking, oh, okay, you know, this is interesting. This is a new market. It's refreshing. It's different. Let's check it
Yeah,
out.
completely. Side note, everyone needs to look up the Korean band Ukulele Picnic. You're welcome.
All right. Maybe I'll do that. Yeah, and I feel like even on this show, we've watched several Korean films now.
Yeah.
We've
I'm
watched,
all about the Korean cinema right now.
yeah, we've
Oh
done
my
like,
gosh, it's in my family. We love it.
yeah. And I feel like Asian cinema is something that, like Japanese cinema has always had a very kind of strong tie here in the States. Whereas kind of French film, it's like every once in a blue moon, something comes across.
The one that I think really took off was Amelie.
Yeah.
Big time.
Yeah. And I can't really think of another one, really.
Recent? I'm not sure.
Yeah. Yeah, I can't think of another one that's recent. Okay, so we kind of went backwards, but that's cool. So, I wanted to talk about real quick about the Oscars new inclusion requirements for Best Picture eligibility.
Did you read up on this at all, Nova? Did you see?
I
Did you
actually
see this
have
article?
not
Okay.
been hearing about it, but I don't know the details.
I missed a very huge detail, and I was like really pissed off about it as a minority.
Yeah, you
But
missed
then
a
John
key
was like-
point.
yeah, I missed a huge key point. So, actually, John, would you mind?
Sure. So they announced that there's a new inclusion policy in order to be eligible to be nominated for Best Picture, and they have a series of mandates. The article said there was 4, but when I was scrolling through, there was like 5. So I don't know what that was all about. But essentially, you need to cover 2 of these in order to be eligible. So one of them is like, what's the A1 that you were talking about?
Lead
'Cause
or
you-
significant supporting actor, at least one of them has to be an underrepresented racial or ethnic group.
Yeah, or LGBTQ.
Not in this one, no.
Yeah.
That
Oh, not in this
that not in this specific lead or supporting actors, which kind of pisses me off. That's the one thing that now pisses me off.
It doesn't. You can't always tell, and sometimes gay actors, I feel like, play straight characters, like, and vice versa.
Yeah, I suppose that's true. Good point. But it would be nice if, like, you know, maybe a trans actor could play a trans character.
Yeah, I feel like
And that
generally, yeah, underrepresented. They might
Yeah.
be able to fall into that, but yeah,
Well,
I see your point.
On variety.com, it is not listed in there, and everything else, it is listed in there. So then A2 is the general ensemble cast. So at least 30% of the actors have to have become from one of these underrepresented groups, which I think is a bit lowballing, but perhaps a good start. And LGBTQ plus is in this list.
Yeah. So then there was also behind the scenes requirements. So, and they were really broad. So I feel like it's actually very easy for a studio, maybe not an independent production per se, but a studio backed production can easily cover a lot of these. So it's like crew production. Again, I think it was 30%. I don't have it in front of me. I'm kind of trying to remember what I read yesterday.
Yeah, it was 30%.
Yeah, 30% on crew. You can have it in advertising or in internships. So, like, if you're a studio and they have to have two, so it's not like a total loophole, but like, you could just kind of back end it in advertising and in like studio internships or something. Is what it kind of feels like.
Agreed.
But I do like that you have to have two of them. It makes it a little bit more incentivizing to actually get people on the production itself, I think.
Agreed. There's a couple more we missed. So A3, the main storyline or subject matter, the theme and the narrative has to be centered around underrepresented groups.
That's
so
right.
in this case, in Portrait of a Lady on Fire, this would be one of like the tick boxes, right?
Bing, bing, bing.
Right. And then the female director also would tick the boxes. So this, as of 2019, we're in 2020, by the way, guys, but the film was released in 2019. This would have ticked those boxes had this been requirements last year.
And this will go into effect as of 2022?
2021?
I think
you're
it's
right.
affecting the films of 2021. So like,
Yeah,
if you're
you're right.
making a film next year and you want to be able to nominate it for Best Picture, you have to like meet these requirements. So, and this is Academy mandated. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so the scheduled 2022 and 2023, a film will submit a confidential Academy Inclusion Standard form to be considered for Best Picture. But beginning 2024, for the 96th Oscars, a film submitting for Best Picture will have to meet the inclusion threshold by meeting 2 of the 4 standards. So as of 2024, there's no like ifs, ands, or buts. You won't have to go through that red tape that they're requiring in 22 and 23. Because it's just going to be like, you have to now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How do you guys feel about it? While we're on it, how does it make you feel now that you've like Rochalle? Now that you kind of like reread it, do you like it? Is it too light? Or too much? What do you guys think?
I like it, but I think part of it is not enough. And just to be clear, at first I was really offended as a minority because I thought we had to do everything, and I was like, there's so many stories that can be told that don't require like a minority actor, you know, and I want to see those minority films. Please don't get me wrong. But I was just a little like,
yeah, the idea that it would eliminate categories of art from the running.
Right.
Yeah, I feel like they did a good job of dodging that while still trying to be inclusive.
Wait, so the subject has to revolve around underrepresented groups? Because that's the thing. And I think that's my biggest thing as an actor is sometimes I'll get auditions where I'm playing have you noticed a lot of films that get nominated for an Oscar? It's usually about slavery or something like that if you're looking for Black representation. But with Caucasian films, you can just be a person living their life and you get nominated. And that's really cool. And I want to see more of that.
Well, like in this one, you could, for example, play a role that is not specified as anything, right? That is just, or even male, female. You could just like play a role, and just by you being in it as the lead, you would be ticking off one of those boxes.
Cool.
So if the film is then also about slavery, then you've just ticked both. You've just ticked 2 boxes.
Got it. Okay.
So that's the thing. It's like, it doesn't have to be about that subject matter, but if it is, that's like a box ticked. So if you're in it, but it's just like 12 Angry Men, being like redone or whatever, then we need to get some people on the crew, right?
Got it.
And we need to have like 30% of our crew to tick the other box. So that's kind of how it works.
So I wish that was like 40 at least. And I think that aspect is kind of sad that they have to require that.
I was thinking that, isn't it terrifying that you 30%? So then how much do you have now?
Yeah, exactly.
Well, I'm wondering if 30% is like, crew sizes vary, right? So like on a really big set, there could be 100.
Yeah. And then so it's 30 people.
But a lot of sets are only like 25 people. Depending on your cast, cast takes up a lot, extras take up a lot, but like a crew can be like 30 people total.
Yeah,
right?
but for those bigger sets, I mean, we're not just talking about one underrepresented group. I mean, think about all of these different minorities that we have, and then
Well,
when
I
you add
agree that
gender into it-
studios. Yeah, sorry, I didn't mean to. Okay.
Oh no, you're good.
I just think that studios can mandate these things very easily and should be doing them. The wiggle room that I like is that like an independently financed film, you tend to have these like producer director types who kind of just reach out to everyone they know. And so if only 25% of the people working in film that you can have on the film that are available, it's like, because there's only so many spots, I can see it being harder for somebody on that level. Like if Kevin Smith tries to do something outside of the studio, right? Like he made Red State or whatever, just on his own time, then it's like harder for him to kind of go through these things and check them all off. But I do think I am with you that like, I think studio backing, studio finance in general can handle these things very easily.
Yeah. I wonder, if this will sort of become instinct, I mean, right now it's a guideline, but maybe eventually naturally will we just be doing this in general? Because as you said, if a producer doesn't know someone that fits the criteria, I think this will sort of open that up and open up a lot of opportunities to where we're making these connections, and maybe eventually, I don't know if it's too positive or too hopeful, they'll be able to expand the diversity on film sets and behind the scenes as well.
Well, I don't think that's too hopeful at all. Oh, sorry.
No, I think that's the goal, like we saw that in other industries. So it's about time that Hollywood, who pretty much like leads this stuff at the end of the day, should be doing this. So hopefully it'll trickle down even more so into society.
Yeah. And Hollywood is a networking industry. So if you have more people, more diversity on sets, then you're going to meet more diverse people. And you're more likely to work with those people again, right? Like, so when I was in film school about 10 years ago, it was like just kind of becoming popular for women to start doing like cinematography and like kind of like branching outside of the typical script supervisor, makeup kind of roles that women have been in for a very long time in film. Like I was starting to see a lot of cinematographers, a lot of, assistant cameras, a lot of directors. So that's because, and I just started working with more and more often with women as a result of that. Right. So I think this is kind of a step like that. It's like, let's mix up the pot, because then you're going to meet people and you're going to work with the ones. Obviously we want it to be a meritocracy, but if you don't have the chance to be, to be seen, your merit's never going to get recognized. Right.
Right. Well, to the Academy, good on you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm glad they're trying. It's taken them long enough to kind of get their act together.
Yeah.
Back to Portrait of a Lady. I'll say spoilers from here on out. We'll put up the spoiler warning. We are going to start talking about it in plot detail. I will say go watch this movie if you haven't. It's worth the time. It's a good movie. If you don't care about spoilers, listen, and maybe we'll convince you to go watch it anyway.
Yes. It's available on Hulu right now.
Yes.
By the way.
So I wanted to talk cast a little bit. Very small cast. Mostly women, I think, fairly obvious upon watching.
I was able to fit the whole cast on one page of notes.
I know, right? There's really 4 characters, and everyone else that has a line is just completely tertiary. So I pulled up the names because they're French and they're a little hard for me. But there's Naomi Merlant is the lead. She plays Marianne, the painter in the film, and Adele Hanel plays the titular lady on fire. Something I thought interesting in their biography is they've both been co-leads with Jean Dujardin, one of the few famous Frenchmen in today's market, known for The Artist. If you've ever seen The Artist, he kind of made a momentary crossover to the States. So they're significant. Like I'd never seen these actresses before, but when I looked through their resumes, I was like, they are like basically big French names at the moment. There's Luana Bajrami, who plays Sophie the maid. I'd never seen her before, but I thought she was great. And then the last one is Valeria Golina, who plays the mother, the countess or
Golino.
comtesse. What is it?
Golino.
Thank you, Golino. Who's actually done quite a number of American films.
Yes.
I recognized her, and I wasn't sure from what. And I thought it was funny when I came across the one that pinged with me, which was Hot Shots. Have you guys seen Hot Shots? No? Rochelle, you're my age.
Okay.
I'm so surprised. It was like Charlie Sheen back before he went crazy.
Oh, that's why I hate him.
Yeah.
I probably avoided it on purpose.
But it
I
was
know
like,
of
yeah, Hot Shots was in like the heyday of spoof movies, like the last gasp of Mel Brooks movies, the like Naked Gun films. It was like in line with those, like the really over the top. But she was the main ingenue in that film, so I thought it was fun to see her again. Acting, you guys are actors. Let's talk some acting. Nova, what did you think? Because you had some stuff kind of in our preamble that I thought was interesting.
Oh, about the acting. I think for me, what I love about it, which I think might just be sort of a common style choice in French cinema in general, is how understated the acting is. They're not trying to make you feel anything. They're not trying to make anything dramatic. There's a lot of just line throwing here and there. So that's what I really liked. But at the same time, the intense scenes, they were subtle, they weren't forced, and they were very well done. I think Rochelle and I were talking before about how this is sort of one of those movies where it's very difficult to do because you don't have the backing of background music, of fancy editing to make a dramatic point. So really you have to be fully engaged with all the other characters around you and really do your research. And I think they did that. All of the women in the film did such a stunning job of that.
Yeah.
They did the nuanced performances. I was in awe the entire time. It was...
There's a scene I think that really highlights the acting in particular in this film, and it's the one where they're pointing out each other's quirks.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
like
Yes.
you always, you breathe with your mouth open when you're nervous, and just like the beats that the actors have to hit, so that the other ones can point it out, and we can notice it without it being like crazy overt. And like, do they carry these mannerisms throughout the film, which I believe they do. Just being able to like internalize the character that deeply so that kind of moment works, I thought was very impressive, just in terms of just attention to detail.
Oh yeah, and the chemistry in that scene is phenomenal too. I think that's sort of like a nice little pivotal moment that we see. And that's what I like too, is those charged moments, they're very selective. You don't see that throughout the entire film. So it's almost like you've earned it when you get to that point.
I do feel there is a lot of tension in the film though. Like, even though like, they don't have a lot of those big moments, there's a lot of just like, they're very close to each other. She's like trying to steal glances, and there's just kind of this immediate tension between them because of this, that I thought was like something that makes you feel something like right away in what is otherwise a very kind of slow-paced movie. Mm-hmm. But I feel like the pace is actually quite deliberate, and after just like the first few scenes, I lost track of the idea that it was slow or anything like that.
Yeah. I was actually very surprised how not the pacing is slow, but like how quick it went. Yeah. Like I was watching it, I was so engrossed, and then it was over, and I was like, how is that fast and slow? Because it's a beautiful film. It's art. I mean, it really truly is art. And I think that really makes up for the pace.
Yeah. I felt like, to hit on what you're talking about, that feeling at the end of it, I think that's really what the film is absolutely trying to evoke, is that idea of a really intense memory. right? Like you have these moments, right? And they can come and go quickly, but then they also stick with you. Like I think of just like the time you and Rochelle, you and I went to Las Vegas together, right? It was a really short trip, but like if I were to think back on it, I feel like I would picture it kind of in the way that this film portrays things, right? Where it's like it was a long weekend, but it was also just like boom, it was just like over.
Yeah, I was just like over. Yeah.
And,
Oh, that was fun.
yeah, that was good.
Move to LA and we can do that more.
One day you'll get through, I'm sure. So, cinematography. You said this film is art. Let's talk about the art. So, first and foremost of the art, I would say, is the cinematography. Nova, you want to start us on this one?
Yeah, okay. So while I was watching the film, I was taking notes while watching it. And I had a moment where I paused it 30 minutes into the film, and it's the part where Marianne, the painter, and Sophia.
Yes,
Sophie.
Yeah, Sophie.
I guess is the maid, I'd say.
Yeah.
Sophie's serving her dinner, and when I paused that moment, I looked up from my notes and I noticed, oh my goodness, this looks exactly like an oil painting. So I think that's interesting. The interior scenes, the way that they're lit, there's the fireplace on the side that sort of illuminates into the scene, and it illuminates onto the girls, but the background is very dark, almost sort of blackened out, and so it very much looked like a 17th, 18th century romantic painting. And I wonder if this is intentional, because I think in doing so, it really sort of brings you into the scene and just really makes you feel like you are being taken back in time. I mean, it really sets the scenes up. I think another reason it could just be that sort of add a nice little flourishment to the piece, because the film is about art. It is about a painter. It is about her subject. So that could be another thing, in representing the cinematography matches the subject as a whole. But I don't know. I feel like it was very much intentional because it's so glaringly obvious. And I also looked up some paintings that it reminded me of. I did a study on this French painter named Jon Olson in college. And that's really sort of a common thing with his painting, is this idea of having that one light source illuminating onto the subjects with the muses, and then having sort of the background have this sort of backlit thing where it's very dark behind, and it creates this sort of romantic and mystical sort of notion. The example, The Stolen Kiss, which was created in 1760. The other one, Italian Interior, also created in 1760. When you put those together with the still of Marianne with Sophie, you see that it very much is so. They're very similar, and there's sort of a theme here.
You can do that with most of the interior shots in particular, and some of the exteriors as well. Like some of the exteriors a little less so, just because of the backdrop, but definitely the interiors, and it's so intentional. I have a friend, my old cinematography teacher, who later became a colleague, teaches these photography classes where they do this exact exercise. They try to recreate classic paintings via lighting. So it's very possible. And it is kind of just taking the principles from those old styles. Like you said, the backlighting and like these strong single sources. And then of course the costuming and makeup does a lot of work on top of that, right?
Of course, yeah. For me, at first, it reminded me of two things: Rembrandt, and sort of not as like obvious, but in Frida, the film with Selma Hayek, they do that. They pan from like her paintings into like the scene. It reminded me of that, but again, it was nowhere near as like obvious, which I very much appreciated, and I think just goes with the style of French cinema.
Yeah. Well, Frida also was trying to highlight a specific artist's art, so it would transition from her paintings to the world, which was a very cool thing. Yeah.
And also because of that style of painting, she was like a surrealist.
Yeah.
Obviously it's going to be more obvious, but initially I thought of Rembrandt, and then I read Nova's notes, which I actually rarely read the notes of our guests until the morning of, but she had images in there. So I was like, I have to read this. And so I started doing research on the painter that she just said, and I was like, nope, Rembrandt is no longer in my mind. It is now who you just said.
Well, it's funny that you say that because Rembrandt was in my mind initially. I thought Rembrandt and I thought Caravaggio, but then I looked it up and Rembrandt came before the sort of the 18th century movement. So I wanted to find a painter that was sort of in around the same time period that this story took place. And so that's when Fragonard sort of popped up in my head.
I did find some critiques online of the film that the style of painting in the film doesn't quite match the era. Like the way, like when they show the close-ups of the paint canvas and kind of the materials she uses and the tools she uses, that it's not entirely accurate, apparently, but you could have fooled me. It looks pretty, it looks pretty great.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
Yeah. And I feel like the idea of these shots looking like paintings, I think it really does tie into our point of view, which is we open ahead of the story and we flash back to it. So I feel like all of the things we're seeing are within the context of her remembering this time, this like 2-week period that the film covers. And as a painter, she's going to remember them like paintings and in these moments of paintings. And I feel like when I think about the structure of this film and the way that it uses point of view, it puts a lot of things immediately into context for me, which I think we'll continue to get to throughout. But like, I feel like you said that the film doesn't try to manipulate you. I think it absolutely does, but that it's so subtle that you don't notice that it's doing it. And that is what filmmakers strive to do, right? I feel like we try to, I have these classes and I describe film as an empathy machine. And so if a film can get you to really immerse and empathize, it's doing its job. And I feel like this film, yeah, it has it in spades, and the cinematography is a big part of that. I also just want to point out sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say also that when we are first introduced into the film, the protagonist is teaching people how to paint a portrait and like what to stay attentive to, the details in a person, like, what their face shape does, how they stand, etc. And I thought that was a really interesting way of also telling the audience how to watch the film. It was bringing in like what this film is about and the main source of income, I guess, for this character that we're going to be following, and again teaching us what to pay attention to.
Yeah.
And I thought that was really interesting.
Yeah, her lines are constantly drawing your eye around the screen. Like when she's describing the ear, I love that shot where she's following her and she's just like studying her ear, and you can't help but do it with her, right? Because the film's like always kind of guiding your eye. And on a technical level, the cinematography, not just with the stills, I just want to point out that there are some really technically difficult shots in this film. Particularly, there's like a walk and talk where Eloise, the lady on fire, is in a full close up for this really long walk across these like uneven cliffs, and it's incredibly close to her, and it's technically perfect. Like, and it's a very difficult kind of shot to do. And there's a lot of those in here that are very subtle, but like technically marvelous. Like the final shot is, that one's all on the actor, but it's I looked up, it's 2 minutes and 37 seconds long, the final shot of the film. And it's just her reacting, right? It's like just this, her kind of going through this emotional set, this emotional ride. And so there's just a lot of stuff in there where I'm just like, on a filmmaking level, I'm just very impressed that they managed to pull it off and make it feel so smooth and so seamless and like without hitches, really.
Yeah. I love this movie.
So another shot I was very familiar with that I feel like can be a good segue is the overhead shot when the maid gets an abortion throughout the film. She's pregnant and she needs to get an abortion, and I like the whole thing where they go through the remedy and they're kind of like showing us these old world methods.
Yeah, I thought that was fun for
Yeah.
what it is.
For what? Yeah, I mean it's depressing, but I liked just kind of how real the movie got. It just like
Yes.
was never. It's a very unflinching film. It's just like this is life in this time, and you know she can't afford that kid. Like, but then the remedy doesn't work, so they have to go to the midwife, I'm guessing, to get this abortion, and they have a shot. It's overhead looking down on her on the bed, and I've like built this exact rig. I did like a pregnancy film once that had like the exact same setup, and it's a very cumbersome kind of setup to do to get a camera kind of just like directly over something like that. And she's got like a baby.
Well, there's two kids.
There's two kids, but one of them's like baby.
An infant, yeah.
Yeah. What did you guys think of this sequence in general?
That I would say definitely very intentional, and there's so much meaning behind it. I don't know that it resonated with me emotionally because the entire film is sort of the pacing of it and the way that everything's sort of just given to you. I didn't feel like I don't know that I was supposed to feel anything. I'm assuming I was, but I didn't feel anything. But I mean, I think I was sort of I was very impressed with the baby for one. I mean, great way of interacting with the actress. I was impressed. That was well done. I mean, I think it's interesting because I wonder in that moment if Sophie regretted her decision to abort the baby, because you have actual life next to you, and then you have the life inside of you that you can't afford to have, so you have to get rid of. And throughout their entire sort of mission to abort the baby using their own DIY means, you don't see the presence of a baby. You don't really sort of understand, the implications as an adult, but you don't really feel it through the movie. So when you have that moment where she's with this baby and she's getting emotional, I do think it's supposed to be impactful, but I don't know that I personally felt emotionally swayed in any way, because I looked at it more as like this sort of artistic intention to show a physical baby while this baby we cannot see is being aborted.
Yeah, I had trouble trying to, in a similar way, kind of figure out exactly what the director wanted us to take away from the baby. Because obviously, Rochalle, what do you think?
I think that this entire scene is just a way for the director to instill that this movie is about love and sisterhood. And I really don't know how else to expand on that. I should have written more about this, but I don't think that the baby was there to show regret. I think the baby was there to just show unconditional love, because that's what infants require and what they give, right? Yeah.
I didn't see this as like anti-abortion moment.
No.
Necessarily
Oh, no.
No.
Right? It's like there's already, to some extent, the baby's kind of like, there's already life here. Does she need this baby? Right now, do we need it? But it was an interesting choice, a bold choice for sure.
It was a bold choice. And I think that it's definitely not designed to have an anti-abortion message. I mean, let's pretend like this isn't a feminist film. But my only logical qualm in this film was this scene, only because it would not be that simple. Like, it's a painful experience to go through, especially then. And I just thought they really, although I liked why they understated it, it was just like, logically, I can't.
She's so stoic throughout the process, too.
That's what I mean. It was just like, there was nothing. And like, I guess I don't really know, but especially back then, like the
I don't know exactly what she's doing down there.
It's invasive. Like it's gonna hurt.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
You're not
Like-
being put under or anything.
Yeah.
Like clearly
Yeah.
she's getting all up in her business. But
Do you think that that was sort of a misstep on the actress's part, or do you think that was intentional? The director.
I think it was intentional. I think one, it was intentional because they didn't want to like feed the anti-abortion narrative, and two, there was some other point in that you know, maybe she made the right decision, or she just had to shut that down in order to go through with it, something along those lines.
I think part of it is character based, just because Sophie is so stoic throughout the film.
Yes.
Even when she's lighthearted, she's very reserved, right? She's always she's the one who's on the bottom of the totem pole for sure in this movie, right? And so she always kind of like minds her place. But and like what I liked about this sequence is just sort of the pro-choiceness of it, the bodily autonomy. That all of the women involved in the moment are just like supportive, right? Mm-hmm. They just immediately like they don't ask questions. Like she doesn't tell the lady of the house because there is kind of a societal proprietary thing that like, you know, we don't want to advertise it. But I like
It's
that when it's scandalous. But when she opens up to, you know, this newcomer, the artist, you know, it's like she's kind of a neutral party. She's kind of someone that they are able to kind of bridge, like Sophie and Eloise in a way, right?
Right.
And so I like that, you know, as soon as it kind of comes up, they don't have this moral debate about whether you should. They just kind of trust that she knows what's up. And I did like that.
Me too. Yeah, because it was her body.
Yeah. And the film definitely reinforces a lot of feminist ideas, right?
Yeah. Oh, completely. Yeah. Big fan of that, by the way.
But in a way that everybody can watch and understand, you know, and I think that's what I liked about this film is, you know, it doesn't matter what your take is on feminism, you will watch it, you will understand it, because they're not trying, everything in it is completely, this is what happens, this is real, and because they're not trying to emotionally sway you, it's sort of like either you take it or you leave it.
Yeah. And especially like this topic is such a contentious one, and she does it so just as is. Like there's really no bells and whistles to it. Like whereas the romance side of things, you know, it's a romance, and so like you do kind of get these more emotional moments, and you get kind of this drama and tension. But with this subplot, like they just are so matter of fact about it that I think it was a really smart way to handle it. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. Yep.
So
Well handled.
yeah, I was just going over our notes here, and you wrote music or lack thereof.
Or lack thereof, except for when Sophie originally goes sees the midwife, they're at like a feast, I guess. Yeah. And I thought it was like some witch ritual, to be honest with you.
When it started, right?
Yeah. I was like,
it reminded me of The Witch. With, right? Didn't it a little bit?
Oh, I haven't seen it.
I wasn't mad at it, but I was like, this is a weird turn.
Yeah.
But then they start singing, and I was completely enchanted. And
that's my favorite scene in the movie.
Me too.
I was blown away by the singing, and like just that whole moment. It's my favorite moment in the whole film, actually.
I wonder if those women, I should have looked it up. I wonder if those women are a choir. They must be.
Oh, and do you know what they're singing? I wrote this one down.
You wrote this down, but prior to you writing it down, no, I did not know. I do know that it's Latin.
So yeah, they are repeating a phrase in Latin. I want to find the Latin. Non possunt fugere, which means they cannot escape.
Which this song is also in the ending credits.
Yeah. This reminds me of the Get Out song, right?
Yeah.
Where they have like all the words that are like where it's telling him to get out, essentially.
Yeah.
And this was kind of the opposite message, but I liked the way it was worked in. It reminds me a little bit of that song in Get Out. So the whole film is completely diegetic, which is to say that all of the sound is motivated from within the film. One of my other favorite films that does this is No Country for Old Men,
Yes.
which is a film that a lot of people don't even realize doesn't have a score. And this one, I had a couple of moments, like it was probably 30 minutes into the film before I even noticed, where I was like, I started wondering, I'm like, did the opening have music? Like I started doing that thing where I was like, was there music? And then I really noticed that it's all sound design, and the design itself is impeccable. Like the mix, this could have won Oscar for best sound design as far as I'm concerned. It was really something.
It really was something. And I was the same way. I did not notice there was no music until the scene that we were just speaking of. And then it kind of just clicked like, oh, this is the first time I've heard music this whole time.
Not the one where she plays the piano? Not that scene?
Well, I mean, I didn't count that because that piano was off key and or not tuned. And I was like, I hated that part, actually.
Really?
I was like, this is too much in my ear. I know
like
that song. I know that song will serve a purpose, and I liked it for that, but I was like, my ear does not like this. You know? What do you think, Nova?
For me, I didn't notice until Marianne and Eloise kissed. Because usually in the traditional sense, they'll try to add some type of romantic piano, key to it, or some type, just something. And I noticed it was just dead noise. And then I realized, oh my gosh, there hasn't really been music throughout this entire film. There is no score. Yeah. These actors have to sort of bring out the chemistry on their own. So I noticed it through their performances during moments where usually the scene is heightened by a soundtrack.
There is a cadence to the film, though. And it's very intentional with the action, right? Between the painting and like the scraping that you get, the ruffling of the dress, like there's so much sound going on that I think does kind of write it. What were you saying, Rochalle?
I was going to say, so there's 3 times that there's music in this film, right? When she plays the off-tuned piano, and then when they go to the feast, and then at the end when she's in the orchestra. So 2 of those 3 times, the music is actually coming from the characters, which I liked.
Yeah. That's scene at night when they all sing. I was like, what the hell's going on? And then when they all start to harmonize, like when it levels out, when they kind of peak, and then they start the clapping and all that, I was just like, this is so cool.
It was so cool.
I wish I could have seen that in a theater.
Me too.
Yes.
Me too. All the reviews were just like, you have to see this in a theater. And I'm very sad that I did not have the chance to do that.
Yeah. I also love the way they cut out of that scene, just to kind of touch on that scene for a minute. The way they cut out of that scene where she gets lit on fire and then she falls. And as Marianne comes to help her up, there's a match cut to them at the beach. And it's like, it's when they have their first kiss. Like it leads directly into it in a way that like the editing is so slick, because she like goes to reach down and then it cuts to the like her grabbing her arm at the beach on the rocks. It's such a nice match cut. Like there's some really slick editing in this movie especially with the transitions, right? And I feel like that again comes back to that memory theme where it's like she remembers the moment of her on fire, and she immediately equates it to their first kiss, even though it's the next day.
Well, that's because that the flame is just basically like Eloise, like that passion and love for her. It's just like bursting out of her, and now she can no longer like contain it, right? And so it's like a metaphor for her accepting
a lot of fire in the film.
Act on this feeling.
Yeah, a lot of fire in the film. I noticed early on that Marianne's character often has fire either in her frame or in the background. Like she's got like in a lot of ways I started kind of asking myself, who's the lady on fire? It's like that thing with the master where everybody's like, who's the master? And in this
Marianne
film,
is the lady on fire.
Right? Well, Eloise too, right? They are kind of both the woman on fire,
but only because she catches Marianne's fire. Right?
Yeah, maybe.
Eloise is the titular character here. She doesn't have power. She only gets it once Marianne shows up.
But she's burning up from the inside. We have that shot of the painting where her heart catches on fire. The paint catches on fire right over
Because of Marianne.
her heart, which is such a good shot.
He lights it on. Marianne lights it on fire.
Yeah. And again, very subjective, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
What were you going to say, Nova?
Oh, I was just going to say that is so subtle, but I don't know that. I think that, that definitely adds to the nuance of the theme of the idea of the lady on fire, but I don't know. I took it literally. The scene where Eloise's dress literally lights on fire, and that is the painting that we see in the very beginning of the film.
Yeah. Well, we see a mix of the two scenes, right? It's those same two scenes I just mentioned, because it's her on fire and it's the beach. And the painting is her on fire on the beach. Like, in Marianne's mind, it's all kind of meshed together, right? That she just kind of, because she's a portraitist, so she likes to create these images, right? We see it at the end with the Orpheus painting, with the Orpheus and Eurydice painting that she has, where like she's very good at sort of like picking these moments. And I think that, her perspective really backs that up throughout, and that painting is a nice highlight of that. And we never see her paint it, which is interesting.
What, Nova?
Do you like the moment where Heloise's dress catches on fire? There was something about that moment, to be honest, that felt sort of awkward to me.
I agree. Especially
it was so strange.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But he fell.
Yeah, I've started thinking about this movie though as a little bit I don't want to say untrustworthy, but not literal. Like, I don't think we're watching the literal action. I think we're watching Marianne's memories of the action, right? And she remembers Eloise as this very poised, stoic woman who doesn't like to smile. You really have to coax it out of her. So to me, when the film has these moments that are like kind of like, what? I look at it as point of view, and that it's how she remembers it. Like, would she actually just stand there and look at her while her dress is on fire? But this is what Marianne remembers of it. That was my take.
I can see that now. I really like that, and that puts a lot of heavy lifting on Adele Hanel, who plays Heloise, because you have to play this character as the memory of another character.
Yeah. And she does it, and she absolutely steps up to that task, which is just pretty incredible. Yeah, it all kind of clicked for me after she leaves, and when it picks up back up with her in the portrait studio. That's when I started going like, oh, wait a minute, I think I've been watching this movie a little bit wrong, and that the way I should be watching it is just very much her lens and her distortion to some extent.
Excellent point. So she is the subject of the film, no?
Right.
I was a little confused who was at first.
Yeah.
Yes.
I had a rambling rant in here about that, actually.
Right.
I was yeah.
Right. Because the painting itself is Eloise, right? But the film is a portrait of a lady on fire, and that lady is Marianne. So so it's both, which I like.
At first I thought it was Eloise because she was the subject of study,
right,
when it came to this portrait, right? So that's easy to grasp. But as you were saying, the more I went into this, I started realizing it was Marianne. And now that you mentioned what you just said, that it was through her lens, excellent point, John. I'm completely convinced now.
Yeah. And I think this also touches on something you mentioned earlier, Nova, which is the ghost image, right? Because we get this weird thing in this movie that feels like it's been very grounded and practical, where she gets a feeling, she turns around, and she sees very briefly the ghost image of Eloise in a white dress, and then she disappears. And we see it twice, and then at the end when she's leaving, we get that that moment to me was so well played. Because of the reference to Orpheus and Eurydice, the famous Greek story. Just for our listeners, in case they don't know, it's the Greek story where Eurydice has died, and Orpheus goes to the underworld to fetch her. And when he brings her back, he's not allowed to turn around, but he turns around to look at her to see that she's still there, and then she disappears forever. Very bold, very quick recap. But so they play out this moment, and I love the callback that like Eloise says earlier in the film. Maybe Eurydice told him to turn around. She's like, maybe it was her decision and not Orpheus's decision, which is a really kind of fun interpretation. And so as she's leaving, she says, turn around, and we get that exact image again, right? And again, it's a painting. And then the darkness comes because she closes the door behind her. And so thinking back on those other two images, I was like, she's trying to like remember this sequence of events that are very positive for the most part. But it's always tainted by the tragedy of loss. And so like, as they get closer and closer to the end, she can't help but kind of go ahead to the ending. Like she keeps skipping. To me, I was like, it's her mind skipping to the end. She's so focused on the tragedy of the loss of this relationship that like it even affects the previous memories. That was how I ended up looking at that scene. Once we got to the third iteration of it, I sort of went, okay, this is like her kind of restructuring it. I don't know, you guys think I'm on base? You have other theories?
I think you are right on the nose.
Right on, which I didn't even notice. That's the beauty of this movie. There's so much going on. You can rewatch it and more things will come up.
Yeah.
Like you could accuse it of being a slow movie, but a lot happens in this movie. There's
much happens.
Abortion. They do drugs. Like, people catch on fire.
Yeah, there's a lot going on. Yeah. Like there's the intermixing of the class, which I really appreciated. Like there's a lot going on. So much.
Yeah, you had some good notes on the class, Rochalle. I'd love if you could go into it a little bit more. I think it was you.
No, I don't think that was.
Unless it was Nova.
This is the one time that I didn't have much to say about that.
That's right. Yeah, Nova, you wrote about the class between the conversation of the mother and Marianne, the artist, right?
Oh, their conversation. I think for that I was more focused on just the idea of the generational strife of women in general. So then I love that conversation between Marianne and Heloise's mother. Is she the countess? What's her
Comtesse.
La Comtesse.
Yeah, with the La Comtesse, because at first you're thinking your other daughter just committed suicide. What are you doing? The logical modern part of me is thinking, why are you making your daughter get married? Why are you forcing her? And most movies, the mothers just sort of push their daughters into it. They're sort of perpetuating this sort of tradition, and that's it. But I love that conversation because in that moment you realize that the La Comtesse, she knows the strife that Heloise is going through, because she experienced it herself, which you don't realize in the beginning when she's talking about her own painting and how when she showed up after being married, her painting was staring at her and it was there. And it doesn't until she brings up, I don't remember how the conversation went exactly, but she sort of just in one simple sentence just says, I know.
They start talking about Milan, and the mother is just dying to go to Milan. She's like, she wants to get back to a sense of life. We don't know what happened to the father. There's no real explanation about her husband. But like clearly the mother's fate is tied to her daughter, right? Yeah. She's got one job left as Comtesse, and that's to marry off her daughter to someone who will then also provide for her, right? Yeah. Like that's kind of how that system works. So, and she admits, like you said in that scene, I think, to the selfish motive. She's like, because Marianne points it out, she's like, she's like, oh, Milan will be great. She'll love Milan. She's like, and you, right? And she's like, why not? Like, like we get her motives very quickly, right? Before we even meet Eloise, which I did like the build up to seeing Eloise in her face. Like, because in that scene, it's before we meet her, and at first I thought that was the subject, and I was like, oh, this is her, because we see her from behind, she's still hidden. But then it's like a further delay for the reveal. They wait a long time to show her, actually.
And you know,
No, but go ahead.
I was just gonna say, thanks. I was gonna say that I think also with that exchange, I think it's really important too, because I think that's what makes the film such a great feminist film, and that it's not just showing, you know, that because we're giving into the patriarchy, that's sort of what leads to this sort of, that's the tragedy of being a woman during that time, but it's also that other women are actively continuing that, they're perpetuating it. La Comtesse, she's putting her daughter through the arranged marriage because she also benefits from it, but also it's tradition and she's following that. So I think that's also what makes it great, is you're showing that it's not just men that are sort of the cause of why we need feminism, but also other women as well.
Oh,
Yeah,
definitely.
It's the whole
Definitely.
structure, right?
Yeah.
I mean, to be fair though, although aristocratic women were educated, it was just minimal. It wasn't to the point that they were good at critical thinking or independent thinking. You know, it was enough for they could impress the husband to be, and perhaps entertain the family here and there and continue this tradition. So I did not fault the mother for anything.
And I feel like the film addresses that fairly directly when they have the
Yes.
conversation about her not being allowed to paint men.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so she's not allowed to study male anatomy. She's like, but people do it, you know. I really, yes, go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say in secret. That's it.
Yeah, but I really liked this film's highlighting of the duality of being a woman in this time, in that
Yeah.
there's like the accepted place, and then there's the reality. You know, it's like the reality is that you can go to the midwife and get an abortion if you need it, right? But the accepted thing is that it's a scandal and that it's wrong and it's outside of marriage, right? And we get a lot of this throughout the film, of just kind of that duality that I felt was very illuminating. Really, it was really refreshing.
Yeah, and also the notion that no woman is really truly free in the film, because I know there's this huge juxtaposing thing between Heloise and Marianne, where Heloise is sheltered, she's bound by her fate, she has to, as an aristocrat, she has to be married off, she doesn't have the freedom or the stability to live on her own. But then you have Marianne, who, because her father is a painter, owns a studio, and she, I'm assuming, is the only child if she's due to inherit his studio. She can do that, she can work for a living, and she can commission paintings, but at the same time, as you said, she can't paint, she's not allowed to learn how to paint men nude, she does it in secret, but also she can't submit paintings in her name, it has to be in her father's name, so she's still limited as well because she's a woman.
Yeah, and you
Right.
really feel that limitation as we reach the ending of the film, like when the mother's coming back from her little away time, and we've had some sexy time, we've had some fun, we've done some drugs, but then, like, as you creep closer, you really feel it. I felt it, just that sense of neither one of them has the power to change the situation. Like, Eloise is gonna get married, and whether Marianne gives her the portrait or not is gonna happen. Like, she'll just hire somebody else, and like neither one of them is free enough to pull off sort of the getaway. Like, I started doing that thing that I feel like they would have been doing during this time, which is like, how could we do it? How could we pull it off? Like, what trick could we use? And I'm just like, down every road is just more despair.
Right.
It's like, okay, one, they're on an island, and like, how do you get off together without anybody knowing? And like, even if they did go off together, then what do they do? Then they have to hide their relationship. And then, like, it just, like, I was just like, it just spirals out in your mind so easily how dead-ended they are. Like, it's a really oppressive feeling. And in terms of like the empathy machine, this really, I feel like, kind of, it put me in that place of just like, shit, there's no win here. And It's rough. I feel for you.
It's either you are either resigned to your fate or you do what Heloise's sister did and you kill yourself, which I thought was going to be the fate of Heloise. I thought that the reason why they were alluding to her sister's suicide was because they were foreshadowing her own suicide in the end.
Yeah, I had to pause this movie in the middle to go pick up my wife from the train station, and it was like I had a half hour left, and I just like was talking to her in the car. I was talking to her about it. I was just like, because I kind of had wished I'd waited to watch the whole thing with her, and I was just like, something bad's gonna happen. Like the movie is forecasting tragedy all over the place.
But it was tragedy. They don't have power and they
Yeah.
can't be together.
Yeah,
It
it was.
was tragic.
It was less drastic than I thought, but it was still heartbreaking. It was like the movie strangely does and doesn't pull punches, right? It's like in some ways it could have really hammered us and been like she dies and it's horrible, or like they have this really bad falling out.
Then I would have hated the movie.
Right.
Me too.
We all
Well,
would have
I
been
don't think I
sour.
would've been as sad.
Yeah.
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 And in this one, because this just felt so real, of just like that kind of that super strong connection you can have, and then just like having to put it aside. It was I really liked the connection to the Orpheus and Eurydice story. Have you guys heard of Hadestown, the musical?
Heard of it, but I don't quite know.
So
what
it
it's
either just came out or was about to come out when they shut Broadway down. So it's brand new. My wife's been listening to this album for months now, and so I've listened to the whole show. And it is a restaging of Orpheus and Eurydice, in like a version of like the Black South, like New Orleans style jazz and stuff. So
That sounds fun.
it's a great soundtrack. I highly recommend it. And near the end of the musical, they have sort of a discussion about tragedy and why we bother to tell tragic stories when we know they're gonna make us sad. And one of the arguments in that show is that every time we read Orpheus and Eurydice or watch a play of such, we hope that it will pan out this time. And you always so a tragedy, even though you know it's going to go bad, it still gives you that hope. And it still gives you that sense of, I want this to work. It brings out something very human in us to sort of root for the tragedy not to happen. But, it's like tragedy does happen. And sometimes you gotta, and it's very real and it can hurt, but it's a very human thing. And I really like that. And I think this movie really hit that. Like, I feel like it really hit that note of like, I wanted them to escape together. I knew it wasn't going to happen. When they brought up Orpheus and Eurydice, it's like, okay, there's two lovers who don't end up together. And yet still, I found myself going like, could they pull it off? Could she like hide her in a crate on the boat, or like make an excuse to get her to shore? Like some way that they could get off together. And it's just not meant to be, I guess.
What you were just saying about tragedy and why we watch that brings me to my current obsession with research and why humans cry. And
This is a good one.
they P.S. the protein composition is different if you cry out of emotion versus like pain or like cutting onions. I thought that was really neat. It makes your tears stickier and more glossy, so people can see it more, so they are able to like empathize with you more, which I thought was fascinating. Anyways, what I was going to say,
They
is
form
that,
different crystalline structures too, if you're happy or sad. Yeah.
Yes, it was very fascinating. And so part of the study, which was not a very big study, there's still so much research to be had on this, but I think it was by King's College in London, and they took 40 people and they had them watch sad movies and then like interviewed them afterwards and kind of like monitored their depression, and it was immediately afterwards, and it was very like they were very sad, very depressed. And then what they did was they did it again, but then they interviewed them like an hour and a half later once they were able to process everything, and then they were like happier than they were than before going into the movie. So it kind of builds this like appreciation for happiness and this ability to just kind of like start appreciating your life, I guess, which I thought was really interesting and kind of fits this and what you were just saying.
I heard a very simple. Go ahead, Nova.
Oh, I was just going to say it's also very cathartic in a way to be able to watch a movie, to cry, to feel, and to sort of get out whatever you might subconsciously or consciously be feeling.
Completely. That's why I watch film personally.
Oh, catharsis is a big part of film. Huge. On the crying note, I heard a explanation, like a simplified explanation for crying that I really appreciated. And it's sort of like anytime you have more emotion than you can contain, your body releases a chemical to like, you know, deal with that. And tears are like a excess byproduct of this chemical reaction. So whether that's too much happiness or too much sadness, too much tragedy or too much anger or anything, any emotion, if you get too much of it, it can make you cry. And like, and that release is cathartic and it is good for you. And like, you know, I think while we're on a feminist film, I think it's always a good idea to, you know, encourage men to be able to cry and like embrace their feeling, because it's healthy. It's like literally good for you, because your body just like can only take so much of a feeling. And so it's like happy tears, those are great. You know, sad tears, also good for you. Like,
angry tears, good for you. All of it's good for you. I'm a big supporter of crying. I cry a lot.
Same here. I'm a massive crybaby.
Me too. One thing I wanted to kind of circle back to was how, I guess we're still on it though, was like how the tragedy wasn't this like big cinematic, like, you know, execution of them or like something, you know?
Yeah, she wasn't being dragged back to the underworld, literally.
Right,
like in the Greek tragedy, right?
Right. So I think that really went along with like how the director showed this longing and dance of love through like the nuances rather than just like the physicality of sex. Like we don't get that really. Like, you know, it's implied we know they have sex, but like
There's some smooching.
It's not. I'm sorry?
There's some smooching.
Which, by the way, the spit in that was like the most disgusting thing in the
come
world.
on.
Yeah,
There's nothing more intimate than sharing a little spit.
But why did they have to put it on camera like that? It would like draw out, like there'd be like a string. And the first time I was like, fine. Like they're drooling over each other, fine. But then like it kept happening and I was like, gross. I hate spit, by the way. I hate the sound of it. I hate the look of it. I hate it. So I was like not the audience for that.
No, very cruel intentions. It wasn't, I didn't love it.
I was like,
didn't mind
no. I could have done without that and had the same feeling.
Didn't bother me. It proves to me that the actors are in it. That they're in
it's true.
the moment.
I agree.
That they're not faking it or holding back. You know?
Totally. I kept thinking, does this happen when I kiss someone?
Probably occasionally.
Probably occasionally. So anyway, so I loved that like the lack of this major tragedy kind of coincided with the fact that like there's this lack of huge sexual portrayal.
Although I will say, I think this is the first movie we've had with nudity. Am I wrong on that?
No, I think you're right.
Yeah, strangely enough, we've had a lot of R-rated movies too, but this is like the first nudity, and it's all very. It's all very benign.
Very
there's vajayjay. There's Bush.
Is there vajayjay?
Yeah. When she has her period, when she gets her period.
Oh, I
showed it.
Yeah, full Bush. Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
But that's what's so great about this film is that everything, you know, sometimes nudity can get so gratuitous, but in this one it made sense why it was necessary. Yeah. So you forget about it because it's just it makes sense for the scene.
Yeah. It's not objectifying, right?
No, not at all.
That's
probably why
natural.
I didn't. It is very natural. It's probably why it didn't even faze me. To be honest with you, because it wasn't vulgar.
Generally, it's very casual. I have a fun anecdote about the period scene, by the way.
Okay.
And it's that my wife showed me this TikTok that was like things that women can relate to, that's like just for women. And it was a series of like a woman like sitting up and going, oh. And like, or like like doing a move and going, oh, because there's period blood.
Yeah.
And so
every month.
when I saw the scene, when she does the sit up and she does that like little look, like, I was like, I know what that is. I was so happy.
Good job. Way to be connected to the
Yeah, way to understand.
Me and my wife, we try to share with each other the experience of the opposite sex as much as possible for the sake of understanding. So she shares stuff like that with me, and I appreciated it when I watched this film. I was like, all right, I know that.
As a woman, I appreciated it too, because I was like, that's exactly what happens. You know, and it's always like when you're laying in bed or like doing something important. It's never like when you're ready for it or like already prepared. Like it's never like that. It's always like in the most inconvenient, kind of scary, anxiety-inducing spaces. You know, always. So going back to like the sexual portrayal, I don't know if this could have been done effectively with a cis straight couple. What do you guys think?
The tension doesn't work the same, for sure.
No.
Because the forbidden nature of a same-sex relationship in any period piece really immediately adds something, right? It's intrinsically forbidden. We know that it's societally inappropriate / unaccepted. Even in societies like France, where it was fairly common, it was still officially shunned, right?
Right.
And like,
you know, and there's another movie, Tulip Fever, where the plot line is sort of similar, except that the woman in it, Alicia Vikander, plays this woman who's already married, and Jane DeHaan plays this painter who falls in love with her while he's painting her. And it's just, the stakes are different in that she wants to be with someone she loves versus marrying somebody because it's what she's supposed to do as a woman. But I think what makes this one special, especially the fact that it's between two women who don't have actual rights, it becomes this really beautiful study about your limitations as a female. And there's also this mutual understanding and I think acceptance among the women about the fact that they don't have any power. And I think that if it was a cisgendered sort of situation, you wouldn't get that study anymore. It wouldn't, I mean, it could still be a feminist film, but I think with this one, because there's, and I wrote that in my notes, because there's the absence of men, that's where the women are actually allowed to be themselves. And with the absence of the older woman who is holding up propriety, they can share their thoughts freely. They can talk about, they can explore abortion. They can do all of these things because they're not under the watchful eyes of anybody who is perpetuating the patriarchy in any way.
yeah, especially when the mom leaves, right? Because the mom is kind of our last holdout representation of the patriarchy in the island. Even though she's still a woman, she's still a participant in that system. Yeah. And yeah, I think that we don't get that duality that we mentioned earlier without it being a same-sex couple. Like we don't get to see the two sides, like you're saying.
Which I loved. It had so many comments on the patriarchy, and they never ever used a male character for it. I was so into that.
Only 2 men have lines in the film, and they're both very quick.
Yeah, it's like go through the trees, and then like I'm here. Where's the painting or something like that?
Well, and then at the end, when the guy says, "Oh, this is one of your fathers. He's gotten very good."
Yeah.
And she's like, "Actually, boss, that's me."
That's me.
Thanks for the compliment.
And I love how that when she told him that, it didn't even faze him. He was like, "Okay."
Yeah. It's just like, I feel like it's common. It's just how it is.
Yeah. It's just how it is, which is absurd. Like, if everyone knows it's how it is, just like stop making it that way and just let them submit. But whatever.
I'm with you.
So, yeah, I think we covered everything, but we kind of covered the script.
Yeah,
huh?
we talked a lot about story.
Yeah.
And I think we're going a little long anyway. So I suppose we can wrap up unless you guys have any kind of last minute thoughts that you wanted to talk about, or
There's too much to talk about with this film. So if we kept going, we'd be here for hours.
there's a lot.
True.
Also, this is kind of random, but is it just me, or does the lead actress Marianne look just like Emma Watson? I couldn't stop seeing Hermione's face.
When I first started watching her, I was like, she looks familiar, and so I looked up her IMDb, and I was like, nope, never seen any of this. And then when I saw your notes, I was like, that has to be it. She has the same face shape as Emma Watson. Maybe a little bit skinnier, but yeah, like they could be sisters or cousins.
Different body type, different hair, but like the face was so like eyes, nose, mouth, very almost identical.
And Adele Hanel sort of reminded me of Kate Winslet.
Mm.
Right?
She's like a cross between Kate Winslet and the Frances Ha, the director.
Greta Gerwig.
Yeah, kind of like a Greta Gerwig / Kate Blanchett thing going on.
Totally.
Yeah. Fun fact: she and the director Celine. Let's see if I can pull up her last name real quick. The director Celine Sciamma. I'm gonna guess that's how it's pronounced. Her were an item for a very long time before this film. They broke up amicably shortly before the shooting of this film. And when I read that, I was just like, what a thing to like direct your ex-lover in this film in this way.
The French have a much more casual culture about this stuff. Like,
well, and clearly they had a very mature relationship.
Yeah, also that. But like, yeah, the French have a more mature view on like ending relationships than Americans do, period.
Dwayne Johnson, his ex-wife, she produces most of his movies.
Really?
Yeah, but he's not like having intense love relationships in any of his movies.
That's true.
Right? Like in this one, she like, think about it. As a director, you have to like direct the scene where they're pointing out each other's flaws, and they have to be like really in each other's face. And a lot of the shots are also like, bam. So it's like, all right, I'm gonna watch my ex make out and slobber all over. Maybe that's why there's the spit in the movie. Maybe it's revenge.
Oh my god, no! I think they're professional.
No, I think they're very professional. I just like it kind of. I tried to imagine, to some extent, what that's like. It's got to be a very kind of unique experience, and with the subject matter in particular of like lost love.
Well, I mean, I wonder because I've heard of couples directing other couples and doing these love scenes. For example, Sam Taylor Johnson and Aaron Taylor Johnson, they're both married, and she directed him in this movie. I can't remember what the movie was. It's based off of a book about this guy who was addicted to heroin and all these drugs. And there was this really intimate love scene that they shot on Valentine's Day. And I remember she was sort of upset about that, where she turned to the PA or something like that and was like, really? You thought this was a good idea to have me film this on Valentine's Day? So I guess there was that awkwardness, but then you kind of snap back into it and just get to work.
And it's definitely not the most awkward thing that's ever happened in Hollywood. Like Darren Aronofsky has like directed his wife, Rachel Weisz, who has like in, the one with Hugh Jackman, The Fountain. In The Fountain, she like totally has a sex scene with Hugh Jackman, and her husband is the director. So, you know, people in relationships can do this. I guess why not exes? That was just kind of a little fact.
It's a movie, you know.
It's like once you get into your job, you want it to be perfect. You want to capture that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Art.
Real quick, I think it's their third collaboration on a film.
Yeah, I think you're correct. But they only broke up just before this film.
Yeah, just before. I'd love to be a fly on that wall as to why. I'm very nosy. And then also just kind of wanted to go back to this ticks yet another box for the new Academy requirements. Yeah.
Oh, you know what? Something I meant to do up top that I totally forgot was there is sort of a hidden fifth lead in this film. by the name of Helene Delmer, who did all the paintings and drawings.
Oh, yes.
And every time you see the drawing happening, it's her hands. And she worked very closely with Naomi. And so I just want to give a shout out to her. The art in this movie is so good.
It's so good.
And
She was
like-
doing 16-hour days, and little fun fact, she is left-handed, but the actress that portrays this character is right-handed.
Oh,
so
no.
I was trying to like look for these kind of things
The
throughout
tells.
the film. Yeah, the tells. Yeah.
Yeah, see if she's if she shows her right-handedness
Yeah.
throughout. Yeah, so that's fun. And the one thing is like when they have the close-up shots on the canvas and she's like drawing, like I don't know if you guys draw or paint, but I do that sort of thing as a hobby. I draw a lot, and these scenes gave me the exact anxiety that I always have when I'm drawing, of just the uncertainty of where to place things and like where to place color, or just like the lines when they're scraping with the charcoal. I got like a very visceral like feeling of when I draw, of just kind of how uncertain it can feel at times.
I do draw and paint, but not in the way that you do, John. P.S. John is a very talented artist. But like I just kind of do it to just like pass time, and I do not ever expect to like sell a painting, or I don't even show it really, you know? So I do not get that anxiety at all. The only time I get that anxiety is actually with fluid painting. And that's only because you have to actually like calculate how much paint you're going to put on the size canvas you have. And that's what gives me anxiety.
There's just such a permanence to paint that like once you start, I mean, she is working with oil paints, which as you can see, stay wet for a long time. Like when she smears the face off several days later, you can only do that with oil paint. But there is this feeling of permanence when you put paint down. That's kind of nerve-wracking.
I mean, the deliberate strokes that were also sort of scattered, and that was terrifying.
And having to do it on camera.
Mm-hmm.
Having to paint on film, or whatever 8K digital that they shot in, that would be so. That's so much pressure. I feel like you have to have such supreme confidence in artists to accept that job. Like, I would be so worried about messing it up. Yeah, usually they just, it's like you don't often have to perform as an illustrator on camera, right? It's such a rare thing it's such an interesting thing to turn into performance art that they kind of do in this film. All right, sorry, I was trying to wrap us up and then I wound up dragging us out. So this has been great. Thank you so much, Nova, for joining us. Is there any socials you want to put up? Any projects you need to promote? Anything like that?
Don't have anything I'm promoting at the moment.
What about what you just made?
What did I just make?
The quarantine film that you and two other
Oh my gosh! Yes. Okay, I did. There was a quarantine film that we did that I did get involved in. It's called Game Night. It's a fun little short horror that me and a few people that I know did. So there's that.
Is it
my
online?
Social handle
Is it on? Is there a link or anything we can add for that?
The link is on my bio. So if you go to my Instagram, NovaJones07, you'll see it there.
Cool. We'll also link it below and in the title cards.
Yeah, we'll have to get
I'll
that
send it
from
to
you.
you guys. And actually, I do have another a short that I had done a while back is now on Amazon Prime, so that's also available to watch.
Awesome.
Yes. So I will put that up there too.
What's the name of that if they want to just like Google it or Amazon Prime search it?
Yes. It's called Without Regret. I spaced and forgot for a second there, so I was stalling for time.
All right, Rochelle, as always, thank you so much. Where can the people find you?
Just click on the links below.
Just click on-
Instagram and
go to our Instagram for the show at Views in Paradox. We put up fun posters for all the films that we talk about, and you can kind of see what's coming up if you follow us on Instagram. Join us on the Facebook group to chat with us, talk about movies. Sometimes we put up polls, all kinds of kind of random things happen in our
Hollywood
Facebook group.
news.
Yeah. So yeah, join us on Facebook. Just kind of search Views and Paradox, and you should be able to find it. Until next time, thank you for watching and or listening. And until next time, watch more movies.
Happy viewing, guys.